Hello and welcome to Histories Tech. Today we are going to be looking at the M46 and M47 Patton tanks, the first two of the Pattons. I would like to get this out of the way that I will only be addressing the M46 and the M47. I will be not talking about the M48 or M60, which is technically not a Patton, even though it gets that nickname. With that out of the way, we're going to be looking at the M46 and M47, which are basically the medium tanks that will help transition the United States into using what will be known as the main battle tank. So let's go ahead and look at how we got the M46 and 47 Pattons. Now, we can't talk about these two tanks without looking at the predecessors, which would be the M4 Sherman and the M26 Pershing tanks. Now, the whole idea behind the M46 was designed to replace these two tanks, which saw extensive combat during World War II, but their time and age had actually started to come to an end, as it was seen there was needed to be a better medium tank. Now, interestingly enough, the M46 technically shouldn't have existed, as the M26 was supposed to be the next generation of medium tank. However, due to multiple issues, it did not replace the M4 like it was supposed to, and the M46 was needed. Now, to fix the mobility issues of the M26, a series of upgrades were placed on it. Now, this included a better engine, better transmission and drivetrain setup. Now, because these upgrades and modifications kept continuing on this design, they decided not to call it the M26E2 and instead redesignate it as the M46, as they were essentially building an entirely new tank. And it would receive the name Patton after the deceased General George S. Patton. Now, full production of the M46 would begin in July of 1950, and it would actually see its first action in Korea in August of 1950. By the end of 1950, 15% of all tanks in Korea were the M46. And these numbers would grow over time as the M46 proved to be capable of taking on the Soviet-made T-34 medium tank, meaning that the M26 and eventually the M4s would all be replaced by the M46 by the end of the Korean War. Now, sadly for the M46, it was basically a stopgap measure for a new tank known as the T-42, and its service would end in 1957. However, it would see some life beyond that, being used in Europe for trainers for future tanks being sold to them by the United States. Now, the tank that was supposed to replace the M46 was actually known as the T-42 medium tank. And this tank was supposed to be just as well armed as a M46, however, it was supposed to have much heavier armor. However, there were some questions about its performance capabilities, and when these were finally tested, it was proven that the T-42 had no better maneuverability than an M4A3 model Sherman, meaning it would not meet the requirements of the United States at the time. Now, a means to rectify this issue was basically to combine the T-42 with an M46, and this became the M46E1. And this basically took the T-42's turret and placed it onto the body of an M46, and this was basically the prototype of the M47. By mating these two platforms together, they actually created a tank with much better ballistic protection and the ability to handle more arms than previous models. Thus, the M47 Patton was born. This new tank would actually see more usage by more NATO allies than the previous models had seen. However, it would be the only Patton series tank to never see combat while with the United States. Now, the M47 would see fielding in Europe as soon as 1952, with NATO members agreeing to either adopt fielding the British Centurion main battle tank, the first main battle tank, or the M47 as their standard tank in Europe. Back in the United States, it was actually the United States Marine Corps who fielded most of the M47s for the United States, with all 7 Marine tank battalions using the M47 up until their retirement and replacement with the M48 in 1959. And while the M47 did not have a long lifespan with the United States due to its immediate replacement with the M48, it did see a long life outside the United States with countries such as Ethiopia, France, Greece, Portugal, Italy, Japan, Jordan, Pakistan, and many others to field it. Because of its deployment with foreign units, it saw combat from the 1950s into the 1990s. Now, sadly, the M47 around the world would see its use more as a target than any other thing, and to this day, any military that has a remaining M47 tends to use them as an expendable target. But there you have it, a quick look at the M46 and M47 Patton tanks. Two tanks that really didn't have long lifespans. In fact, averaging only about 10 years each from the beginning of production until the end of production. These tanks had incredibly short lifespans. If it wasn't for the exception of European nations and other nations, they probably would have never made it outside the 1950s. However, they were the stopgap measure that the United States needed to develop its own main battle tank. We will get to the first American battle tanks next time when I discuss the M48 and the M60. But if you'd like to know more about the British Centurion or the main battle tank or the M4, please look at some of my earlier videos. I have lots about tanks there. But that's it for today. I thank you for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you on the next time.